a result of the drug war. Because it's in the black market, it's because it's underground, that we have the associated crimes like murder that come with the drug war. And that doesn't count the $50+ billion that you can identify that the government spends in order to wage the war on drugs. There are other costs. I was visiting with the president of a university in Guatemala, and we were chatting. We were at an event, very appropriate discussion, and I said, so, what do you think is the most important issue for your country? And he changed his tone and he said, the drug war is the most devastating thing for the foreign policy of the U.S. with respect to Latin America. It's that we send planes in to defoliate crops. We are sending in money. We train special forces in some of these countries. I mean, it has had a very corrupting effect on law enforcement in those countries because of the money that's at stake and their place between the United States on one hand and the United States government, and then the very lucrative drug trade that is done by their countrymen on the other. And it puts them in really an unwinnable position. So as you said, there are many unrealized costs from the drug war in addition to the $50 billion and incredible numbers of people who are in prison for nonviolent drug crimes.
And the amount of money incarcerating them and the billions we spend on the war and interdiction, trying to keep it from coming into the country, that billions could be used on education, like they've done with tobacco. Right. Tobacco used to be glamorous, and doctors would advertise it on TV.
Oh, yes.
And then they just spent a huge amount of time, energy, and money educating people that it'll kill you, which it will. And now you find a whole generation of kids, yes, some are still smoking, but doesn't have the allure that it had. And if we could use that money, the billions we're spending, incarcerating a pot smoker, and also trying to keep it out of the country, flying over to Guatemala and spraying their plants. If we could spend that on education.
And rehabilitation. Because these folks don't need to be in jail. They don't, an ounce of marijuana should not land a 17-year-old in jail where they're going to get raped and die of AIDS and be exposed to all kinds of other criminal...
Turn them into a criminal.
Yeah, it's the, University of Criminals. We don't need that in this country. We need to get them into rehabilitation. We need to help them and educate them into, if they want to use that, the proper way of using it. We do the same thing with drinking alcohol. We do the same thing with drinking caffeine, for crying out loud.
Right. The devastation in the black community is really tragic. Something like 50% of black males in their 20s are in the criminal justice system. 50%.
And how much of that is related in any way, shape, or form to drugs? Do we know?
It's huge. It's huge. There's a huge, and I would be off the reservation if I tried to give you statistics. My recollection is that it's disproportionate. Minorities, blacks and Hispanics, are disproportionately represented in the drug crimes that are prosecuted in this country. And if you're white, your odds are much lower of getting prosecuted, number one. Number two, if you're caught, you're far more likely to go into what they call the treatment programs rather than directly to prison. But you mentioned the University of Prison. A factoid I heard one time was that in Chicago they graduate more felons than they do college graduates.
Wow.
And a young man with a felony conviction for drug possession or sales is essentially unemployable. And so you have an angry 20-year-old with that can't get a job, or at least a good one, because
and turns to crime and returns to it. Yeah.
Right.
Well, that is really interesting. I know that when we talk about the drug war and the money that we spend on the drug war, I think about what we could be doing. The rehabilitation, the lack of prisons, the freeing up of the prisons, and everything else. I just think about also the civil liberties of it. We started this discussion at the top of the hour with how do you choose that you relax with a glass of beer? I relax by taking a nice hot bath. You might relax with, something else, cannabis or, something else. How do we bridge that prejudice that people have the right in this country? We have the inalienable right, according to our forefathers, to be able to choose what we do in our own home. So tell us how that how your research is coming, how we can get that message across.
Well, that is a constant battle, and a story that comes to mind is there is a case that the Supreme Court just took. The amicus briefs are due this fall, and it's for a church out of New Mexico that is an offshoot of a Brazilian version of Catholicism, where they use as part of their sacrament a hallucinogen called ayahuasca, which is made from the bark of this plant and the vine of this plant. And it's a you have to drink like a gallon of this foul-tasting tea. The people who drink it end up throwing up before having hallucinations, and it's all done within this religious context in once a month, 6-hour type church service. And there are only like 140 church members in the country, and they're arguing for their religious freedom under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act to include this in their sacrament. And so you ask the question, well, how do you make other people tolerate or have a view toward pluralism that would embrace the choices that other people make as long as they're not affecting me?
Right.
And so I've been asking many people about this case, religious people, people of faith, people of great commitments, what are their thoughts about this issue? And it's been very interesting because there is a lot of prejudice against the church and the way that they choose to comport themselves. There's a lot of suspicion that, well, they made up the church because they really wanted to drink the ayahuasca. And just this week, I was visiting with the defense coordinator on the amicus briefs, and he said that one of the amicus briefs is going to be written by a professor from Brigham Young University with support from a major law school a law firm in Salt Lake City. And I thought that was really interesting, that because you have in the Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, a church that understands what it means to hold an exceptional viewpoint or to be persecuted for what their beliefs are, they have developed an appreciation for tolerance and pluralism, that they will defend the religious practices of another religion. So very often, you have to have walked in somebody else's shoes to be more sympathetic and appreciative of their liberties. So until we have had ours offended, we're less likely to defend somebody else's.
That's true. What an interesting discussion we've had today on this. And it could go on and on. And in fact, we are at the end of our segment now. So thank you very much for being with us,
Thank
David.
you.
And I want to invite you to join in the discussion at reason.org, which is the organization that we're at right now, Reason Foundation. Reason.org is their website. And you can learn a little bit more about the drug war and some of the research and papers that are being written on American policy right now. And David, great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And if you're more interested in the Libertarian Party, please join us at www.lp.org. And you can also call us.
ca.lp.org also.
There you go, California, well spoken. And you can also call us at 1-800-ELECT-US. So we'll see you next time on the Libertarian Alternative. Bye-bye.
Don't give up, learn to live.